everyone! In today's tutorial, we're going to go ahead and look at the event blocks. The event blocks are the ones that we see over here in yellow. There are only a few, but they are very important. Event blocks are the ones that have a cap on them because they are the starting blocks. This means they can have code underneath them, but not above. So let's go ahead and look at the first few of the event blocks that we have. When green flag is clicked is the one that we use a lot of times. So let's say I bring in say hello, and when I click on the green flag, Kitty is going to say hello. Hitting the green flag is what triggers this block, and when this statement is true, it moves on to the next line of code. So let's move this block to the next one. When space key is pressed. So what triggers this block of code is when the space bar is pressed, then the statement is true, then it goes on to the next line of code, which is making Kitty say hello. So when we click on the green flag, nothing happens because what triggers this block is the space bar. So when I hit the space bar, Kitty says hello. If I move on to this one, nothing is going to happen when I click on the green flag. Only when I click on Kitty is it going to say hello. Hello, there you go. Let's look further at what this one can do. We can use this code block to switch between two different backdrops. So let me bring in another backdrop. I will choose Castle 3. And when up arrow key is pressed, I want it to switch to backdrop 1. And when the down arrow key is pressed, I want it to go to the castle. So when I click on the green flag and hit the up arrow key, it moves to backdrop 1. And when I hit the down key, when I hit the down key, Kitty goes to Castle 3. Now let's look at this one. When backdrop switches to backdrop 1. When backdrop switches to Castle 3, I want Kitty to change its size so that it's more proportionate to the staircase. So I want Kitty to change its size to 70%. So what this does is when this statement is true and the backdrop is switched to Castle 3, only then would this block of code be triggered and go to this line of code. So these two are now working together. Only when this happens will this line of code start. So let's hit the green flag and go back to backdrop 1 by hitting the up arrow key, and then go to backdrop 2, which is the Castle 3, by hitting the down arrow key, and Kitty now reduced its size to 70%. Now let's look at this line of code, when loudness is greater than 10. Instead of using loudness, we more often than not use it for the timer. So let's bring in the timer from the sensing blocks, and click on its checkbox. Now as you can see, we see the timer on stage. The timer starts counting the moment we hit the green flag. So when we hit the green flag, it starts from 0 and then goes all the way up until we hit the green flag again. If we want to reset it, we can also bring in the reset timer block and click on it, then it resets its timer. With this block of code, we can do very specific things, such as after 3 seconds, I want Kitty to say hello. So we can bring in this block and change it to 3. So when we reset the timer and it starts and it hits 3, then Kitty is going to say hello. So let's reset the timer, goes back to 0, and once it is 3, then Kitty is going to say hello. We can do other different things, such as we want Kitty to hide after 3 seconds, then we can do that. So let's reset the timer, goes all the way back to 0 and then goes to 3, and Kitty is now gone. We can do the other way around where we want Kitty to show after 3 seconds. So when it hits 3, Kitty shows up. So with this block of code, you can do many different things. Now let's look at the 3 remaining blocks of code. These 3 are really helpful when we are using more than one sprite. So let me bring in an apple to demonstrate. I'll put it next to the kitty. Now let's say I want the apple to change its color when I click on Kitty. So when the sprite is clicked, I want Kitty to change Apple's color. So if we do this, instead of apple changing its color, kitty changes its color, but we want it to be the other way around, where when we click on kitty, apple changes its color. So that's when these guys come in. These blocks of code are going to be like a bridge between sprite 1 and sprite 2. So when this sprite is clicked, we want it to send a message to Apple saying, change your color. So let's create a new message and name it change Apple's color. So when Apple receives that message, it changes its color. So now when we hit the green flag and we click on kitty, Apple changes its color. So it becomes a bridge between sprite 1 and sprite 2. So when one thing happens, it triggers this block of code and it moves on to the next line of code. So when this statement is true, it triggers this block of code. Now let's have a look at the difference between these two code blocks. They look the same, but they're slightly different. This one says broadcast change Apple's color, and this one says broadcast change Apple's color and wait. To show you the difference, let's make Apple wait 1 second before it changes its color. And I will code kitty like this. So these two are basically the same thing, except that this middle code is different. This one says broadcast change Apple's color, but this one says broadcast change Apple's color and wait. So let me try this one first. When I click on this one, kitty says meow, and then Apple changes its color. Let's have a look at that again. Oh, whoops. Let me change it to red again. So after it says meow, Apple changes its color. But if we click on this one, kitty says meow as Apple is changing its color. So it happens together at the same time. Let's have a look at it again. So what is the difference between the two? So when we click on this one, the meow sound starts right after the message is broadcasted. So what is happening is that for this block of code, all its task is to send a message to Apple. So as soon as that's over, it moves on to the next line of code. So even before Apple changes its color, this line of code is already running. So the moment it's broadcasted, then it goes to say meow. But for this one, it says broadcast, change Apple's color, and wait. What wait means in here is wait until Apple finishes all its line of code. So broadcast, change Apple's color, and wait until Apple changes its color, then say meow. And because Apple is waiting for 1 second, it sounds as if they're happening at the same time. But in reality, it's actually waiting until Apple finishes all its lines of code and then says meow. So it's slightly different, but it's useful when we are coding very specific things where time actually matters. So those are all the event blocks that we have. Event blocks are used a lot when writing our code, so it's good to try out the different blocks to understand how they work. For this challenge, we will make Devin visit Dee's house and go on a house tour. Script so that Devin asks Dee to show around his rooms and for Dee to give Devin a room tour. They will start from the backdrop called Room 2. For Dee, when the sprite is clicked, Dee says, "Hey, what up, Devin?" for 2 seconds. And then he replies, "Haha, sure," for 2 seconds. For Devin, when he receives a message from Dee to start speaking, he replies, "I am doing good," for 2 seconds. Then he asks, "Can I see some of your other rooms?" Devin will also have another block of code. When the backdrop switches, he waits 2 seconds first, and then he says, "Wow, your place is amazing!" So have a go and see if you can create the scenario. The answer key will be provided, so make sure you check when you're done.